Prime Minister Abiy and his team. I also met with Getachew Reda, the TPLF signatory to the November 2nd Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, who was just selected to be the leader of its interim administration. I commended both sides for reaching that agreement and the significant progress made in its implementation. With this agreement in place, the fighting has stopped. Humanitarian assistance is flowing. Services are being restored. Human rights in northern Ethiopia are significantly down. Eritrean forces are leaving. The Ethiopian government is taking the first steps toward transitional justice. But as I discussed with both sides during my visit, to build a durable peace, there must be acknowledgement of the atrocities committed by all parties, as well as accountability together with reconciliation. The conflict in northern Ethiopia was devastating. Men, women, and children were killed. Women and girls were subject to horrific forms of sexual violence. Thousands were forcibly displaced from their homes. Entire communities were specifically targeted based on their ethnicity. Many of these actions were not random or a mere byproduct of war. They were calculated and deliberate. After the department's careful review of the law and the facts, I've determined that members of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, Eritrean Defense Forces, Tigray People's Liberation Front Forces, and Amhara forces committed war crimes during the conflict in northern Ethiopia. Members of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, the Eritrean Defense Forces, and Amhara forces also committed crimes against humanity, including murder, rape, and other forms of sexual violence and persecution. Members of the Amhara forces committed the crime against humanity of deportation or forcible transfer and committed ethnic cleansing through their treatment of Tigrayans in western Tigray. We welcome the commitment that the parties to the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement have made to acknowledge the atrocities committed and their devastating consequences. The government of Ethiopia is taking the first steps by publicly releasing a detailed green paper of transitional justice options based upon best practices and building upon the experiences of other states emerging from periods of mass violence. It has invited experts from the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights to join the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission to deploy a team of human rights monitors to conflict-affected areas to ensure that such acts have truly ceased. The government is also holding public consultations about transitional justice, which, as I discussed with the Prime Minister, should be inclusive of all stakeholders and provide victims a voice. The process is benefiting from the advice of experts in the field, including members of my team who participated in a workshop on transitional justice with other international specialists just last week. Finally and crucially, we urge the government of Ethiopia and the government of Eritrea, as well as the TPLF, to hold those responsible for these atrocities accountable. These steps, acknowledgement, accountability, reconciliation, are key to breaking the cycle of ethnic and political violence that has gripped Ethiopia and prevented it from reaching its unlimited potential for so long. The United States will partner with Ethiopia as it implements a credible transitional justice process for the benefit of all victims and affected communities. We'll stand with Ethiopia as it honestly faces the abuses in its past, provides accountability for the harms committed against its citizens, and moves towards a future of lasting peace. With that, happy to take a couple of questions before turning it over to my colleagues.